Once in a while, I find a story that literally no one else is talking about, and it often is a doozy, at least if you understand it. And I have one of those for you today. It's something that goes under the title of Humanity 2.0. Now, you might be asking, what is that? It's not a new science fiction film being pumped out by Hollywood, and it's not a product being made to make your lives a little easier. It certainly sounds like something like either of those things, but no, this is something else entirely. I'll give you a hint. It comes from the Vatican, and that by itself should raise an eyebrow for Catholics because with a title like Humanity 2.0 and the involvement of Rome and Pope Francis, you know we've stumbled upon something weird. So let's get into this story because I don't know about you, but I'm kind of fond of Humanity 1.0 as it is. Is Humanity 2.0 the sequel to the human condition that nobody asked for? It very well could be that. It's a project from something calling itself the Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development. This is essentially the Laudato Si department from Vatican City. It's an office that builds on the vision of the corporal works of mercy, charitable acts that aid the poor and the vulnerable, through the framework of Laudato Si, Carity Amazonia, and that forthcoming encyclical which people are literally calling Tutti Frutti. I'd quote you a mission statement or about section from their website, but all they have is a video of Cardinal Turkson and a nun talking about human dignity set to stirring music. It's very well done, might I add, but one of the most basic rules of operating an agency of any kind is to have your mission and vision statements available to be read by the public so people know what it is you're supposed to be doing. And that's either missing here or I couldn't find it. But here is what I found on their website. And there's a lot of references to the greatest encyclical ever written, Laudato Si. Or at least that's how people treat it these days, like it's the second coming of Pascendi meets Rerum Novarum. If the Dicastery for never letting us forget about Laudato Si is the home of Humanity 2.0, what is that project actually about? Well, their website has that information for us, and let's get into that. From the Humanity 2.0 website, which is a Vatican website. I'm going to remind you again that it's a Vatican website. Quote, Humanity 2.0 is a vehicle for facilitating collaborative ventures between the traditionally siloed public, private, and faith-based sectors. Its mission is to identify impediments to human flourishing and then work collaboratively across sectors to remove them by sourcing and scaling bold and innovative solutions. Developed in collaboration with the Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development at the Holy See and a consortium of leaders and luminaries, Humanity 2.0 seeks to unite humanity in the common cause of realizing a better world for our children. End quote. And their website has quotes from various secular leaders on it. Now, one of the subjects I studied in grad school was something called collaborative governance. They actually had a certificate program, and I was briefly involved in it because I wanted to understand what it was about, back when in the days when I actually wanted to work in the public sector. It's a new, hot approach to addressing how the public, private, and regular working Jane and Joe all can work together to make our neighborhoods better. It's honestly one of the better ideas to come out of academia and think tanks in a while, but it still has its issues and plenty of them. And to see the Vatican playing along with this is actually kind of concerning, not because they don't have a role to play. The Catholic Church does at the parish and diocesan levels for these kinds of questions, but because there is something obviously missing from this statement and much of the Humanity 2.0 website. Let's go a little deeper on their site and see if you can tell me what that is. Remember, this is a website for the Vatican, and it's supposed to be a Catholic operation. So remember what I said about mission and vision statements. The Sequel to Humanity page actually has those, and good on them for that, and here they are. The mission of Humanity 2.0 is to identify impediments to human flourishing and then work collaboratively across sectors to remove them by sourcing and scaling bold and innovative solutions. End quote. And the vision is, well, this. Quote, our vision is defined by 5 beliefs. 1. We are one species, with a collective responsibility for shaping our future. 2. Challenges to humanity must be met by focused and coordinated action. 3. No human being has more or less intrinsic value than any other. 4. Every human being should have the opportunity to realize their full potential. 5. Common resources should be used to further the common good before private interests. End quote. Did you see what's missing? If you guessed any reference to our blessed Lord Jesus Christ, you'd be right. Once upon a time, the Church, through Catholic action, would promote the social reign of Christ the King. We're not in that business anymore, at least not explicitly. Why is that? Well, I couldn't tell you except for the Second Vatican Council, which Vigano, along with Archbishop Lefebvre, John Venari, and many others before Vigano, all said the same thing. And a lot of people bristled the last time I mentioned this, but it was at that time a quote from Vigano. And here it is, that the Council uncrowned Christ from his social kingship. That might sound like a staggering claim to make, but the Church was overt in this, taking it as part of the gospel that Christ is king. That's how things used to be. We don't hear that much anymore, and when you do, it's usually a much more subdued form, taking it to be some kind of metaphor. But it was never a metaphor. Let me put this another way. If I had read you the Humanity 2.0 website, which is again a Vatican website, but not told you who it was affiliated with, would you have known it was a Catholic website? Would you have known that the program being talked about was anything other than what you might find in a major city in the Western world today that is supposed to see water issues as being connected to land management and food access and social services and the rest? We all know the answer to that. I keep going back to Laudato Si because it's not the typical papal encyclical for a lot of reasons. I'm not going to go over most of them today, but it's definitely different than any other. There have been a few throughout history that have had a major impact on the lives of Catholics and the operation of the Church in the world. I already mentioned Pascendi, which was St. Pius X's encyclical against modernism, and Rerum Novarum, which was Leo XIII's landmark encyclical on economics and Catholic morality, the latter of which is severely misrepresented, especially in the U.S. And the former is utterly ignored now by anyone who isn't an old-fashioned type of Catholic like people who are probably listening to this. There are other encyclicals with this kind of impact as well. Mirari Vos by Gregory XVI comes to mind, for example, or Quadragesimo Anno by Pius XI, and then there's that one that Pius XII released in German in the 1930s, which also comes to mind. These were major entries in the Church's social encyclical teaching library, and they are still relevant today, but even they weren't given this sort of adulation or attention that Laudato Si was given. Laudato Si was not so much a papal encyclical meant to express Francis's ideas about the environment, with the power of the keys and throne of Peter backing them, but rather a blueprint to change the relationship of the Church with the leadership of the world, and a declaration that the Church was ready to get on board with the ideas that Francis lays out in Laudato Si. If you haven't read it, go find a summary, or rather find two summaries at least, one that is laudatory and the other that is either neutral or critical of the document. The Humanity 2.0 project is the logical outcome of the process that started in 2015 when that encyclical letter was released, a process that included some odd figures being invited repeatedly to the Vatican for high-level meetings and conferences that make mention of the wizardry of the day, but little to no reference to our blessed Lord. And I wonder why that is. Our Lady of La Salette comes to mind, though I really hope that I'm wrong about that. Let me know what you think about this. If you want to explore either the dicastery for the Laudato Si program's website or the sequel to Humanity's website, both are linked in the show notes for today's podcast, which can be found over at returntotradition.org and preserved for all posterity over there. Please pray for the Church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.